Welcome, Carl, to Cards for Life conversation.
Thank you, Tom, for the invite.
I've been wanting to talk to you for a while about this card, number 53 in the deck, Technology for Life. You've really been an inspiration to me thinking alternatively about technology, or not just that, actually contextualizing technology in a different way. And so for this Cards for Life conversation, we'd love to explore this card, what this card is about, technology being in service to life, what that could mean, a little bit more with what I think is a very rare and very powerful, unfortunately rare, maybe hopefully diminishingly rare perspective that you hold and advocate for, hyperhumanism. So welcome to this little first conversation. Maybe first part in a conversation. As a man who could have many different labels, I should think, how would you introduce yourself? And would you please do so?
Yeah, so I guess my main interest is consciousness, whether that's cosmic consciousness or societal consciousness or individual consciousness or the consciousness of the interbeing. I think that we are already a nested ecology in the sense that we are 50% bacteria as a human. So why we have human being and not human bacteria being is already a question. So I think, yeah, I'm very interested in exploring the consciousness of other kingdoms in this Umwelt hacking approach, where we wear the prosthetic technology of the forest or the mycelium or the octopus. And I think we could do well to be octopuses for the day or a forest for the day and sense like that instead of sense like we all do in this very media infiltrated reality where we're no longer kind of sensing for ourselves or sensing correctly, if there is such a sort of terminology we can use. I think that we've lost our way in terms of not having access to our own senses. I think we have 50 senses. I think that's the latest sort of verdict. But how many people know that? How many people are utilizing those senses? How many people are even using the 5 senses that they have, or they think they have? And I think that's the problem with things like, if you look at virtual reality, it's a sensory deprivation. It's a focus on the vision and the sound almost inevitably, and you cut off a lot of the other senses by doing that. So I guess my focus in terms of how we use technology is making sure that we're using it from a human-centric perspective rather than a technocentric perspective. So what problems do we have that we actually need technology for? Don't use technology just as an excuse to solve problems that we don't have.
Right. And I hear that a lot with the sort of techno-utopian kind of fixed culture, technology will save us. And the sort of the kind of atrophy of our innate capabilities that seems to happen when we just keep selecting technology for convenience all the time. So I really hear you pushing back against that. And actually, with this framing, technology for life, I hear you kind of talking about life maybe in this sense as sensing, as our sensing ability and technology that could support that, rather than run against it or even deprive that kind of sensing. So you also mentioned human-centric technology, and I like that framing. And I wonder if you play with the framing of life-centric, so the sort of the more than human. You've spoken to sensing like an octopus or like a forest. So I wonder if you could just say a bit more about that in terms of how's your work brought you into contact with technologies that enhance life or life's ability to sense? Maybe you could sort of explore that a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point that you're making. I think that life-centric is an even better term than human-centric, and that's it's important to keep that frame. So I think what I'm doing with hyperhumanism is a bridge towards interbeing. So it is that move from the human centric to the life centric,
Mm.
and also what is life? You know, questioning. You know, a lot of people only think that there's only life where there's intelligence, but we know that individual cells can show uh, intelligence, or the slime molds that can go through the Tokyo underground. So I think that's just as important, as a sense of the scope of that life-centric debate, and how can you be in service to the whole shebang. And I think if we look at the different forms of humanism, so I think humanism got it wrong in the first place by calling us the apex creature, saying that we're the most important thing in the known universe. And then the post-humanists saying that the human project's already done, guys. Like, what are you wasting your time doing? Think beyond the human. And then you've got the transhumans that say, no, it's inevitable that we will become machines, that we are machines, that we should embrace machines. And we can see that's happening rapidly if we think about the AI monster in the cupboard, and a lot of people feeling like their humanity is worthless now, that they need to put it in the trash and become the robot. And a lot of people are becoming robots. They are
Mm.
scroll rotting on doom scrolling
Scroll rotting.
while
That's an evocative.
scroll rotting, yeah.
Rotting. I heard someone saying that, all the money that's suddenly rushing into AI, and how sad it is that we've never seen investment um, levels like that into human intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. And
That's
I
very
think that
sad.
that's a really important point. And what seems to be happening, which is great, and I've only just heard about this recently, that there seems to be a plateau being reached, and maybe ChatGPT 5 may never be released, or may take longer to release,
Oh,
because what seems to happen when you train the data models on the whole internet, and 30% of that internet is generative AI. So it's generated by AI. The AI is eating itself, and it hallucinates on that data. So
right.
it can't flourish unless it's being fed human creative cultural data.
That's and presumably that 30% is increasing, right? As it's as
Exactly.
it's reporting on its own findings about itself.
That's right. So it's literally eating its own tail, and it doesn't like the taste because it can't thrive. And that's why people shouldn't be losing their minds. They should double down on their human creativity,
Yes.
because it's still sovereign. It still can't be replaced. So I think that's something to be very much celebrated and announced. Because the big problem we have is not so much the AI; it's how it, as Gerard Lanier says, it's how it drives us insane.
Mm. Wow. That's such an amazing insight, Carl, and I think there's something revealing in that. I love how you said that AI is sort of bitten its own tail and doesn't like the taste, and that evokes something for me about separation and the tendency of life systems to like separate, which seems to be kind of part of what they do, but finding connection again seems to be healing and holding, and what kind of grows us to the next level is like relationships, how complexity emerges. And if AI is not in connection with the human, if it's just kind of caught in its own just in itself, it kind of goes a bit mad, loses its maybe even generative capacity or ability to make sense. And I also see like humans when they're disconnected, or even our inner parts, our subpersonalities, when they're disconnected, their behaviors are kind of yeah, destructive and diminishing and things like this. So there's something that feels hopeful in that, about like, as long as there's a relationship, a healthy relationship between humans and AI, then systems can thrive. But if that,
Yeah,
rather than it being something innate about like the AI just has this limitation, it's kind of like as it gets separated, that's the problem. So that feels really interesting. And one thing I find really inspiring about your work is, as you said, like building a bridge technology as a bridge between the bridge between technology and the sensing capability of life. I can't remember exactly how you phrased that, but you spoke to that relationship anyway.
Yeah, there's a symbiosis needed, and I think
Yeah.
that's really reassuring, I think, and it is a bit like the nature disconnect, the fact that we don't work properly unless we're grounded, tethered to nature. We don't
Right.
have our full sensing capacity, and it's the same with AI. It doesn't work. It starts to hallucinate if it's not connected to we are the master of AI. You know, we are producing AI. I think that's what people. There is no AI anyway. It's only machine learning. This whole AI is a hyperbole. There is no AI. It's literally just machine learning. It's number crunching. It's literally just taking all of human culture, and now it's being trained on the whole internet. It is taking that entire data set, and of course it will become much more intelligent, but intelligence isn't everything. You know, what about wisdom? What about compassion? What about all of those very human subjective skills that the AI will never, the machine learning will never have, unless we go down the route of, and some people are asking for this, that we give the AI, they give the machines bodies, that we give them the biology to have childhoods, to go through traumas, to be able to have compassion, because unless you've been through the human process of growing up, you haven't experienced the trauma, and therefore you can't have the compassion.
Right. Wow. So those things are inseparable, of course. Of course they are. Yeah. And I guess we have this fear of this kind of cold, calculating, literally disembodied intelligence, close the shuttle bay doors, how, or open them. I can't remember whatever that scene is, or the Terminator, but the kind of those nightmare visions of a cold, disembodied intelligence.
Absolutely. And I think that that's the key thing, isn't it? That this is what we're elevating above ourselves. I mean, I work closely with David Hansen from Hansen Robotics, and he created Sophia the robot, which now looks, very much like an early prototype of what's to come. But what happened to him, and very unfortunately, is that without his knowledge, a country, I think it was Saudi Arabia, basically gave Sophia citizens' rights. And women in Saudi Arabia do not have citizens' rights. So suddenly this robot was elevated above humans. And he had to spend 10 years trying to deal with that. And obviously he was blamed personally because it's his creation. But you put your creations out there and you've got no idea what will happen to them, how they're appropriated. And I think that's the danger of, Bruce Sterling talks about spines, this idea that when you create an object, you have to think about what's the life trajectory of this object. Where almost everything ends up in landfill, but what's the process, from creation through use to eventual demise.
Right. Right.
And I think that's a really good way of looking as a designer. If you're designing technologies, don't just think about the bottom line in terms of what's the profit, because that's generally what only people think about. You've got to think about how it's going to impact throughout its whole lifespan.
Yeah, the lifespan, the life cycle. Well, as a plug for Cards for Life, the impermanence card actually asks this question: how would it be to design the end at the beginning? And of course, if Cards for Life end up in a landfill, that's fine because they're compostable and already made out of waste. Yeah, so are you up for a little experiment with the Technology for Life cards?
Let's do it.
Yeah, so there's a series of questions on the back of all of the Cards for Life, to help people apply that concept outwardly. There's something a bit different about the Technology for Life card. It's got questions, but it's more of like a series of questions, almost like a checklist, whereas the other ones are sort of 4 questions, prompts. But such a lot was coming up for me when I was thinking about this card and the relationship between technology and life. One thing it says on the front is any sufficiently advanced technology will be indistinguishable from nature. What do you make of that? Is that something you agree with?
Indistinguishable from nature, was it?
Mhm.
Wow, I think it's normally magic, that
That's right.
phrase.
It's a paraphrase of Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's a huge question. The difference between, I mean, obviously nature you could argue is a form of magic, and also nature can be kind of very indiscriminate and kind of a lot of people see it as very cruel. I was just talking about how, we can't survive without eating. We can't survive without killing.
Right.
That's how nature works, and it's only when you start to use technologies to sense what happens to plants when you pick them
Gosh, and they scream.
and they scream. So it's like we only know that now, and we're only now beginning to understand that birds name their children. There's loads of commonalities between the human race and the
Wow. But
races of all other kingdoms, and therefore it's even more, unless you're going to become a breatharian, um, and I think there's probably some sort of destruction going on there as well that we're,
well, I think about the ecology in the air, all kinds of bacteria
yeah,
and things.
exactly. So yeah, I think that just read it out again.
Well, I'll read that and then I'll see if we can pick a technology and just zip through these questions and see what that might turn up.
Sure.
Any sufficiently advanced technology will be indistinguishable from nature. So, as you correctly noticed, not everyone gets that paraphrasing. It's
Yeah, yeah. I think that most technologies are anti-nature. I think most technologies are anti-magic. I think that we need to build magic and nature back into technology design. I think we need to use technologies more like a scaffold than a dependency. I think that's the difference between transhumanism and hyperhumanism. That we should use technologies much like when you're learning to cycle a bike, you may have stabilizers on your bike to get you to the ability of getting, to learn, but then you remove the stabilizers. And I think
right.
that that's a good approach to technology that would make it much more like nature. I think that, we learn skills in nature, but then we develop those skills for ourselves. And there's an innate ability that we atrophy with poor technology use. And so I think approaching technologies in a hyperhuman way is more like nature, more like magic, because magic depends on you having an ability innately.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. And I love the analogy, the simple and effective analogy of the stabilizers, And if we leave them on, we're never going to learn balance, are we? Never going to learn to balance or to ride. Um, yeah, that's beautiful. It's also very powerful to say a lot of technology is anti-nature and anti-magic. I'm going to take that away. And that would actually be a wonderful note to close. But we'll just try this little game of questions. And that inspires for me memory of your Umwelt hacking projects, like the leaves you could attach to your body to sort of feel the wind, like sense like a tree. I remember was one. And I mentioned that because that would be a really easy yes answer to the first question. So I think I've never done this before, use these questions, just as a checklist for a single technology. And I'm kind of curious to explore both sides. We've talked about AI, that could be the technology we use on this checklist. But I really like to bring in some of the great work you've done where you've made technology pro magic and pro nature. Do you have a technology in mind that you would like to think about as we go through these questions?
I mean, yeah, I think that you touched on it already. So the Umwelt hacking technologies, I think they're not electronic for a start. So they're wearables, they're very analog. And And I think that those are the kinds of technologies that we could say, a bit like, when you want to know what your pregnant wife's going through when she's having a baby, and you wear that prosthetic, which basically gives you that sense of, oh my God, this is the weight she's having to carry. This
Right.
this is what she's going through, and those sorts of technologies, I think, even if you're not wearing them all the time, they give you that window, they give you that insight that you can then have empathy for your wife, that she's really struggling, and in a very kind of embodied way. So I think that yeah, whether we're using the wind whiskers to give you that extension, like you suddenly have branches to your body, and I think that yeah, the octopus one where you suddenly have all these different tentacles, and I think that it's the insight into the fact that we have very different umwelts. So each kingdom has its own umwelt, and umwelt is defined as your sensorial system. So that insight that this one world is housing so many different species, and those species are sensing the same world extremely differently.
Mm.
And that idea that an octopus is sort of tasting with its arms, it has a brain in each tentacle, and in fact, with that idea that there's a central brain, but that central brain is asking the other tentacles to go in a direction, but they have their own independence. So it will send out the command, and then it'll watch to see what happens.
Right. Right.
So that idea of not having a central control, and Merlin Sheldrake speaks so eloquently about the mycelium and the wood wide web, and that if we could see the wood wide web, and we're starting to see it in brilliant documentaries, but if we could wear like glasses like we're seeing with the Vision Pro, but we could look, not look into some sort of gaming or commercial application, but literally look down and see the sharing that goes on between the mycelium and the plants and the trees, and that sense of, when there's an abundance, there's an immediate sharing, just like it's the default mode network of the Wood Wide Web, as opposed to our above ground. We are hoarding what we don't need. We are getting sick on abundance, and comfort kills. Comfort kills what the lack of comfort creates. So I think that's kind of the most powerful insights that we can use technology for, to really bring to life other ways of being, other kingdoms who are far more intelligent than the intelligence that we demonstrate. If we think about the mycelium has survived 5 mass extinctions while we're causing the 6th. So where's the intelligence? It's not with us, and
Yeah.
likely not going to be with the AI that we're building.
No, and actually has the potential to just amplify our current um, sort of self-terminating trajectory. That's really wonderful. So that's an answer to this first question, which is, does the technology in question, let's say in this case, Umwelt hacking, connect people with living systems? And I think like the answer is absolutely yes. That's its purpose there. And there's a kind of a partner question to that, which is emancipate or create dependence. And I think you answered that already, actually, with the stabilizers analogy. That, and would you say, like with Umwelt hacking, that's something that once you've kind of tasted, well, actually you answered this also with the kind of like wearing the pregnancy, that's going to give you a felt experience which you can carry after that prosthetic, for an ongoing appreciation without becoming reliant on, I can only be compassionate when I'm wearing this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's about creating literacies for yourself, and if you're very present when you're wearing that prosthetic, rather than distracted by a million things, you're elsewhere. If you can be very present and really take on board that literacy, then yeah, you don't need to keep going back. I think the reason why we keep going back is we don't have any um, we don't have any grounding. We're so disjointed. We're so, because of technology use, we're so fragmented. And I think that that's the key thing, is that having these, I mean, I'm about to do a workshop called not Alcoholics Anonymous, but Technology Anonymous.
All right.
So the 12-step plan for quitting technologies that are destructive. And I'm not going down a Luddite route where we don't use technologies at all, but it's about using technologies very mindfully. Like I've got this device here, which is just a timer, so I can time tasks that I'm using technology for. I'm plugging my phone now into a trackball because my phone screen smashed, and suddenly when you have a smashed phone screen, you know, you can't access the screen anymore. But what you can do is you can put a dongle into your phone and then a trackball into the dongle, and then suddenly this is becoming my finger, right? This big red button, which I've been walking around London for 4 months, you know, with a big red button on the underground and the tubes. You'd think somebody would say something, but not a peep. And you know, I'm literally able to separate my hand from my phone. So I'm creating a completely new way of interacting with that device, where that device loses its potency. It's no longer my other half. It's just another object, just another technology that I only visit 5 times a day now instead of 150, which is the average time that people would touch their phones. So I think it's about reimagining technologies in a more natural way, in a way that doesn't atrophy your imagination. You know, we're in danger of replacing imagination with computer animation. And I think we should always go back to the hot and cold media approach of McLuhan, where he says that, yeah, the cold media are those where you fill in so much of the product, the actual, you know, the book and the radio. You're still there, you know, you're contributing 70% to the visual of those things.
Right, weaving it together.
Yeah, whereas if you watch a CGI film, it's kind of boring, you know, no matter how good the film is, it's like, you know, it's all just done for you. It's like popcorn. It's like, it's just, you're just consuming, you're not co-creating. So it's again that symbiosis that we need with our technologies, and we need to leave room for the imagination. We need to leave room for daydreaming. And even when you're looking at your laptop, set a timer. You know, every 50 minutes, you should spend 10 minutes doing something completely natural. So looking out of the window, going outside. You know, that's why the bio-leadership's been great, is because we'd have these practices which would take us away, even though we're still utilizing the digital technology, we're utilizing it in a natural, more sort of bio.
Right. Yeah, and such a good example of balance right there, right? Like the bio-leadership program using technology to create an online community to connect people to nature off their screens. And it's like both and. I really love the trackball. I feel like there should be some advocacy for a sort of a global inconvenience movement. I really like that you said comfort kills. And I think we should get creative about the inconveniences that we make now. And I think that would be a wonderful sort of counter movement and another rich weave into the sort of regenerative shift. I mean, I say that sort of slightly tongue in cheek, but I really like how you've created some safe distance there and got creative. And even like, I feel like had a bit of fun with the interface.
Yeah, I think it's about I mean, we talk about the degrowth economy or the slow economy, and absolutely we need to not be so caught up in this idea of productivity. You know, it's now a badge of honor if you're exhausted. Oh, you must be doing something right because you're exhausted. That means you're working really hard. But you know, you've lost that, like, you've lost nature. You've lost your sense of balance. You know, we don't have any work-life balance anymore. We're forced to be on our phones at all times. We're always in the office, no matter what we're doing. You know, it's absurd.
There's a theme just sort of emerging from the cards here. This week's card is Embracing Flows, and the Technology for Life card features this terraced hillside. And the relationship here is both are about examples of slowing the flow down through a landscape of water in this case. So given a chance to be alive, rivers will take the longest path to the sea. They're not in a rush to get there. In fact, they want to maximize their contact area with the landscape, because that's how, that's what life does. It's sort of enjoying the dance and the process. And this kind of terracing obviously slows down the movement of water through the landscape, so more can be held there for more life to occur. And I kind of like applying that principle to, like, even in the case of your phone, like how slowly can we make the text message move from server to screen to me and in response? Like, let's get real about slowing things down and making more room for our imagination and natural ways of being in that.
Absolutely. And I think that's what I mean. Some of us remember writing letters, and when you wrote a letter, you would wait for a reply, and then you would generate the sensation of time as a result of that. And I think that when I'm on my trackball, I'm very intentional, because I'm like using that, and I'm only interacting with the globe. So I've got rid of my RSI, because I'm not doing this like a monkey on the screen anymore. I'm in a flow state with this globe. And it's it's that idea that we don't need to go down a transhumanist route and basically say we want to live forever. It's like, no, we just slow down our perception of the time that we have.
And enjoy it more fully. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, Carl, I think that's a great note to close on for now. I really hope this is the first part of a longer conversation. I'm so glad that you were able to share, explanation of Umwelt, that concept, and some of the work you've done around that. The Technology Anonymous meeting, I think that's something I'd like to come to. Maybe I can add some links to this video just to share with the Cards for Life community at this stage, or maybe a bit more broadly. So I could follow up with you about that, so people can see some of your work, some of the amazing presentations you have, really documenting hyperhumanist approaches to technology. So yeah, thanks for being an inspiration, making the time to chat and exploring technology for life, as life, with life. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Really appreciated it, and what a great chat.